Lucas here, got another Airsoft video review for you guys for today. Today we have the video review of the Echo 1 XCR-L Airsoft AEG. It's a relatively new release from Echo 1. It's from their polymer line of XCRs licensed by Robinson Armament. If you're interested in purchasing it after you watch this review, there'll be a link down below in the description to Echo 1 USA's website where you can buy it for about $210. Now with that being said, let's go ahead and get right into the review here so it's not too long, starting off with the gun's packaging. As you can see, this is the box your gun will come in. It's your typical Echo 1 box, black and white with a large Echo 1 logo on it. When you pop the box top off, this is what you should see. Everything's packaged pretty well in some thicker black styrofoam. Inside the box, you have a few paper items, including the large piece, your Echo 1 warranty, as well as two smaller pieces, one advertising the compact version of the XCR and an Echo 1 sticker. Then you'll have not one, but two metal 300-round high-capacity M4 magazines, two butterfly keys for winding those magazines, a black plastic vertical grip, which is actually pretty good quality, a small type trickle charger, a 9.6 volt 1500 milliamp small type nunchuck battery, a dejamming rod, and of course, your Echo 1 XCR-L Airsoft AEG itself. Now out of the box, this is a gun that I actually don't really like the look of. In my opinion, it's kind of ugly because to me it's ill-proportioned, so to speak. To me it looks like they chopped off RAS on a G3 and put it onto an M4 body with an ugly crane stock. I just personally tend to dislike the crane stocks, whatever gun they're on. So to me it looks a little bit ugly. To me it's got a little bit too many rails for it, if you catch my drift. It's just a personal preference, but that's just what I see when I think of the gun. However, that has nothing to do with the actual quality of the replica. Starting here with internals, Echo 1 internals tend to be pretty good. They're a little bit better than your stock JG or CYMA internals. According to Echo 1's website, this gun can handle an 11.1 volt LiPo. I don't know if I would personally try it, but if you'd like to, that's what their site is saying. It's obviously a metal version 2 gearbox. Your inner barrel length is a standard M4 barrel length, 363 millimeters, and obviously it's a stock barrel inside. The Echo 1 motors tend to be alright. It's a long type motor. Like I said, they give you a decent rate of fire off of a 9.6. However, if you wanted to upgrade, that could always be a nice place to start to up your rate of fire a slight bit. So internals in the weapon are fairly solid. I really don't see you having any issues there because Echo 1 has excellent quality control when it comes to shipping out good guns. They're also better shimmed, better greased than some of your clones out there. Now, as far as external quality here, this is one of Echo 1's polymer XCR series. Therefore, obviously, it's primarily composed of polymer as opposed to the metal XCR that'll run you about $400. Now, there are only a few metal pieces on this gun, those including your two-piece metal outer barrel. All of the screws on the gun are obviously constructed of metal. Your charging handle and dust cover, those are metal as well. The magazines that are included with the gun, metal. Fire selector switch, trigger guard, sling mounts, and buffer tube for the stock are also constructed of metal, as well as the internals, as I stated earlier. So certainly the metal pieces on the gun are a bit outnumbered. Not necessarily a bad thing because, hey, that polymer construction does make the gun a little bit lighter. This is probably weighing in around the 6-pound area, in my personal opinion, just ballparking it there. Polymer pieces obviously include all your rails, your handguard up here, your upper and lower receiver, your pistol grip, the actual crane stock. So a good amount of it is certainly polymer. The main con of that being, hey, it's not as durable as metal. If you were to drop it several times, eventually it might crack or something like that. The orange tip is constructed of a very cheap quality plastic. Underneath that, however, are 14mm counterclockwise threads. Overall, the externals in the gun are put together rather well. I've never had an issue with a polymer gun. I think it's built rather solidly. No ugly seams to really speak of on this weapon, except for a couple towards the back of the receiver here. And one certainly nice touch to the XCR are a couple trademarks, which we'll go ahead and zoom in on for you now. The trademarks are located on both sides of the gun's lower receiver. Here, on the left side of the replica, we have engraved the Robinson Armament logo, as well as obviously the company name, the model of the gun, the XCR-L, and on the opposite side of the weapon, we have also engraved XCR trademarked. These are engraved, so they're going to stay there, but they're not filled in, so they're kind of light and hard to see unless you're looking right at it. Nice touch, though. Alright, and with those XCR trademarks being shown, we can go ahead and start moving on to some features of this replica. And no more important feature, in my personal opinion, than the gun's battery space. Another reason I don't like the crane stocks, other than the fact that I think it's ugly, is because when you see one on a gun, you assume that's where the battery goes. And unfortunately, I'm not a huge fan of the battery compartments that are inside the crane stocks. The stock itself's nice. There's no extra texture on here to aid in gripping, but hey, it's just a standard crane stock. In order to access your battery compartment, these guns traditionally take only nunchuck batteries. That's the main reason I don't like them. I'm a full stock kind of guy. I like to be able to put whatever battery I want in there. But if you do get this out of the box, you get a crane stock on it, and therefore you're going to have to use those nunchuck batteries. In order to access the compartment, there are two prongs here. You'd simply go ahead and squeeze inward. And once you squeeze them, you can go ahead and slide downward, and the butt plate will pop off. The butt plate does have a little bit of texture on there to aid in gripping when it's pressed against your shoulder. Once that's popped off, you can go ahead and reveal your small type connector as well as wires up in the center actual buffer tube. These two tubes in the stock are hollow, so you can go ahead and place your battery inside. Not necessarily a con as far as putting the battery in there. Like I said, the only issue with that is being this is the only type of battery it can take. Not limited to the one it comes with, but it's limited to nunchuck style batteries. Once you've gone ahead and installed your battery, you'd simply reverse the process, slide the butt plate back on, and pop it into place like so. Pretty simple. No real cons with that. However, there is something I do have to show you regarding the stock. Notice how you can see the front end of the battery sticking out the front of the stock there? Well, you shouldn't be able to do that. Actually, when you get the gun, there are two kind of plastic corkscrew pieces that go in there to block this from happening. However, they're not very well attached. I've had this problem before, and when I was running through a skirmish with this gun recently, pop! They both flew out and the battery slides forward a little bit. It's not like the battery's going to come flying out, but hey, it kind of looks ugly like that, and also say it's raining or you land in a puddle or something, then your battery's obviously going to get soaked. Not necessarily a huge thing. You could probably, if you find them, just easily glue them back into place with some Gorilla Glue or something, but it is something I've experienced with Echo 1 crane stocks a number of times before. Those little pieces are not attached very well, and chances are they're probably going to fly out when you're using the gun. Just be wary of that if you suddenly see your battery kind of dangling out the front of the stock. Other than holding your battery, the stock does have another function. You can go ahead and extend it in order to make the gun more comfortable to you, whether you have longer arms or shorter arms. The crane stock does extend. You can go ahead and change its length simply by pushing in a small sort of toggle switch down here. You can go ahead and change it from its shortest length, shown here, all the way to its longest length, shown here, and a couple different lengths in between, depending on which you'd like. Personally, a little bit surprising here, I actually prefer the gun with the stock's at its shortest setting with the foregrip attached up front, because honestly, this gun's pretty long with the stock all the way extended and a little bit uncomfortable for the fast-paced, quick shooting that I prefer in my games. But it's all personal preference, and the stock is very easy to adjust, obviously, between those different settings. No issues as far as adjusting the stock whatsoever. The XCR's fire selector switch is located only on the weapon's left side and is therefore not ambidextrous. It's your standard M4 style selector switch, being in the dial type, and when faced towards the front of the gun and on the engraved letter S, the weapon is on safe. If you were to flip it upward so that it's pointing towards the sky, the weapon is on semi-auto, and if you were to flip it so it's facing all the way back towards the shooter, the gun is on full auto, where it has a decent rate of fire of around the 800 to 850 rounds per minute area with the included 9.6. It's obviously a nice little selector switch, not too much to talk about it. It's not so loose that it slides between settings, but it's not so tight that it's difficult to move either. Good mix. Another major feature on the XCR would obviously be its magazine, which is ejected via the standard M4 style mag release, located on the right side of the gun just above the trigger guard. When you go ahead and push that in, obviously the magazine simply drops out. So be prepared to catch it. Now the included magazine, as I stated earlier, you do get two of them. They're both metal 300 round high capacity M4 style magazines. The gun obviously taking M4 mags. I've noticed it feeds rather well with King Arms mid-caps, in case you were wondering. Now the included magazine, there are some ugly seams on it, however it's just your standard magazine. There really aren't any trademarks on it other than the Made in China located on the bottom. It works just like a standard high cap. You'd wind it via the gear at the bottom. BBs would feed upward and you'd fill it via the reservoir up top. So a standard high cap, and inside the gun, if you have it wound all the way, it feeds fairly well even on full auto, which I've noticed some Echo 1 M4s haven't in the past. One thing to note about the magazines in this gun, this goes for any magazine, when you're putting it in, you really got to give it some force to get it to lock in, because I've noticed if you kind of put it in, it might sound like it clicks, but then a couple seconds later it'll drop out. So make sure when you go to put your magazine into the XCR that you really do give it some force. Once it's in though, there's very little to no wobble at all, and really no feeding issues whatsoever. Now another big noticeable feature we're kind of overlooking here would be a pretty obvious one, those being all the rails covering the XCR's front end. You get a full RAS system here. As I mentioned, the rails are polymer, but hey, they're just as good. You can go ahead put whatever you want on this weapon. They don't even give you iron sights. You don't get a rear sight, you don't get a front sight, but you do get a rather long top rail here. It's essentially like Echo One is saying, buy an optic for this gun, which I would personally recommend. Get a nice optic up here. I personally used an EOTech replica on it, and it was absolutely great. Looked really cool. You have all the room up here if you wanted to put whatever optic you wanted on this replica. You also get side rails here. Obviously, you could maybe wire the gun to the front if you really wanted to put a PEC box there, or just for looks, laser, flashlight, whatever. Then you get the bottom rail. They give you the foregrip to put on there. I have to say that's a very practical attachment, maybe a bipod or a grenade launcher, depending on whatever you want on this thing. You can do it because you get all the rails. That's a huge pro for me. I love it when you can customize a gun, and with all these rails on here, which I commented earlier, a little bit excessive, you can really do whatever you want. I love the RAS handguard on this gun. Just wish it wasn't so much, so to speak. One thing I really love about the XCR is its charging handle. Just kind of looks cool. It's different than your typical M4 one. It's that nice big black bolt. And when you go ahead and pull it back, like so, you reveal your gun's hop-up unit on the opposite side of the gun. As you can see, your actual hop-up wheel that you turn there is that small black gear. The hop-up unit on this gun is fairly effective. I didn't have really any feeding issues whatsoever. You know, the usual BB rolling out the barrel or the occasional mag misfeed. Nothing whatsoever, and the hop-up was pretty good. It really sent the BBs down there very accurately in strong wind, 0.25 gram BBs being used. So overall, I found the hop-up unit to be pretty good, decent range, some pretty solid accuracy as well. Alright, congratulations, you've reached the end of the video. It's time for the final conclusion of the video review of the XCR-L. Now starting off here, let's cover the cons we've listed throughout the video. Keep in mind, a lot of these are personal. First off, I just generally think the gun looks a little bit ugly. It's not one I would personally pick for myself, just based on the looks. I do like the rails on it, however, I think they're a little bit excessive. I'm more of a guy who likes a nice subtle rail system up front instead of rails everywhere. But it's great that you can go ahead and customize the gun, getting into a quick little pro there. Other things I don't generally like, the trades are nice on the weapon, I just wish they were a little bit filled in, something you could probably do yourself so they stood out a little bit more on the field, because personally, even for me right now, they're a little bit hard to see. I just generally dislike crane stocks because of the fact you have to stick with nunchuck batteries. This one also, I don't care for the fact that those two plastic pieces, like I've experienced before with Echo One guns, just popped out when I was running in the field, something I just generally do not like. Otherwise, though, I find the guns built rather nicely. Yes, it is polymer, but hey, that's something you're going to have to take if you want an XCR-style gun for the price of $200, which is $200 less than the metal one that Echo One sells. Like I said, I do like the rails on it, just wish they weren't as excessive. And also, it's just a generally good performing gun. I actually used it in a skirmish. Like I said, the hop-up, no feeding issues whatsoever. This gun got BBs downrange accurately and a little bit of a decent range, maybe around the 130 feet area, using an adjusted hop-up with 0.25 gram BBs. So skirmishability, if you watch the skirmish testing video, it's actually a pretty nice gun in the field. The one thing I just generally don't like about it is it's a little too long for my personal taste. So overall, I'd rate this gun on a reviewer scale, maybe a 7 or 8 out of 10. On a personal scale, not as high, just because I generally don't like the looks of it, don't like the length of it, just don't like certain things about it. But most of my complaints are personal. Issues with the gun, really non-existent, besides a couple with the crane stock and a couple, you know, as I listed earlier. So overall, it's a pretty solid gun. My recommendation, if you're looking for a woodland-style AEG that's a little bit different and a little bit weird-looking to me, if you want to take this out on the field and use it, certainly a solid weapon to think about buying with that Christmas money that you might have over the next couple weeks. So with that being said, this has been Deathcore Airsoft's review of the Echo One XCR-L. A nice gun, just not one I would personally choose.